Aston Villa 0, Tottenham Hotspur 4. Mark Donaldson alongside Janusz Michallik to pick the bones out of that one. And Janusz, no one in the world expected that second half display when it was 0-0 at half-time. So what happened to Villa to lose 4 goals? And what happened to Spurs to just turn on the afterburners and they were outstanding?
Well, first and foremost, a fantastic ball from Papa Sarr, and that goal kind of opens things up, and then you get a gift and a mistake from Kanza, and that terrible pass that led to the second goal from Brennan Johnson. But I mean, before we even go into it, it's a question of approach, question of philosophy, because this loss is totally on Unai Emery. He played this game not to lose. He was at home with a chance to put Spurs away in that race for the Champions League. With a win, 8 points. I would have said that's with a draw as well. For those that listened to me for a while, I think that Unai Emery is a very good manager, but he's nowhere near the top manager as some make him out to be. So I don't want this to sound harsh, but his name, has popped around again amongst the biggest clubs. He's been at some big clubs, and up until now, he's proven that at the highest level, he's lacking. To me, it is absolutely incredible to come out in a game like this with implications, as I've mentioned, 5 points before the game, to attack at home, to concede possession totally, I think, was 70-30, and in the first half as well. And even though Spurs didn't create any chances in the first half, I always felt they were the more balanced team, the better team, the team that's finally getting back the players, Mark, that they were missing for such a long time.
Yeah, I think you've raised an excellent point there with regards to Villa's approach for this. Now, look, Spurs take chances, and that's why a lot of us enjoy watching them, because at times they'll go 2 against 2 with the 2 centre-backs because they know they can rely on the speed of Van de Ven and Romero as well, alongside Van de Ven. So you'd think the opportunity for Villa there would be to maybe get a ball in behind, to maybe know that they're playing a high line, so put an extra body forward. But to play Longley, to play Konsa, and to play Pau Torres as a back 3. They might have been tired. I get that from Thursday. But surely the chance to go 8 points clear is better than the chance to, we'll just try and keep it tight and see if we can hit on the counter. That's not Villa at Villa Park.
Well, it's not. And remember, when you look at that, I mean, you change of formation. It's not the end of the world. But why, if you're a manager in such a big game, would you do that? And really, to me, it's more of a little bit of a message that you worry about the opposition more than you fancy your team, right? Because look, we can sit here all day and all night, and I'm telling you, Luka Dean and in particular Matty Cash are not wingbacks. I deal with Matty Cash when I commentate the Polish national team, and from time to time he's tried there as well, and he hasn't had a good game yet. Since he became Polish citizen, he hasn't good game, and Poland plays with 3 in the back for the most part as well. So it just doesn't work that way. Both Dean and Matty Cash are better when they come late, very much like Spurs. And you look at Pedro Porro and Udogi. I think I would have stayed with that. I would have matched that as well, and I would have been more attacking. And in turn, I think Unai Emery thought that because of the high line, by the way, both played that, he was going to get behind in the first half. Ali Watkins had some look if it wasn't for Van de Ven with that wonderful tackle or the block. I mean, Van de Ven got injured again, but he had 2 very important blocks, one on Watkins and one on Bailey, if you remember, before he came off injured. But again, all the messages ahead of this game were wrong. So, tiredness, I suppose, maybe to some degree comes into it, but I'm not buying it. What an opportunity loss for Aston Villa. In fact, they were embarrassed. And psychologically now, I don't know where this game goes because now it's much, much closer, obviously, now with Spurs. But it would make me nervous if I were a Villa fan.
Well, the goal difference as well has turned in Spurs' favour after that 4-goal showing in the second half. Praise for Spurs is thoroughly deserved. Let's get to that in the second half, because at halftime, I liked the way that Spurs played in the first half, and it's no surprise. It's not like, Spurs have done that and they've pushed the fullbacks into midfield or further advanced. This is what they do, so we knew what they were going to do. The one thing I thought at halftime was that James Maddison was playing a little bit too close to Pape Sarr, the holder. And if they move them forward a little bit to kind of get a little bit closer, so you've got Johnson on one side and you've got Kulusevski on the other. And we saw that. It was a brilliant ball in by Sarr. You've already mentioned that. But Maddison's a game changer. And I just felt he wasn't hiding, but he was just playing too deep in the first half. And then when he got some freedom, my goodness, that second half, he kick-started it.
Yes, that's part of that. He had plenty of the ball, obviously, but
Yep.
you could see in the first half that they were missing that final pass. I think in the build-up, in possession, they were very good. Fullbacks were getting involved as they always do. I think we saw Papa Sarr showing his might on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
I think if you look at this, I mean, I don't know if it was halftime speech or halftime adjustments. I look at Spurs in two seasons, right? Because to me, this was a little bit of rustiness. I mean, remember where Spurs were in the beginning of the season. I mean, they were at time, I don't want to say unplayable, but they were top of the league, right? And remember what happened in that fatal game against Chelsea at home when they lost 4-1, where Van de Ven and James Maddison got injured, Udogie and who else? I think Romero got red cards, right? And it was a 4-1 loss, and it all fell apart. And as I've mentioned today, you kind of saw the game, the team from then, right? Because Richarlison wasn't starting yet, wasn't playing great. By the way, they've missed him because he got injured just recently when he was finally picking up form. But this was a team that we saw under Ange Postecoglou early in the season when they were flying. And I think within this game, they sort of got going. You saw a little bit of frustration between Kulusevski and Son, because he felt that Kulusevski could have played a little bit quicker on some of the occasions, right? But then again, in the second half, you saw the best of Son. You saw the best of Kulusevski driving, almost unbreakable. It almost seems like he's dead tired, and yet he continues to go. So I just think that's what happens in the season when you do recover the players, when they kind of get back together and maybe just remember what made them so good early on.
Spurs are already 2-0 up when John McGinn gets sent off. So you're not saying, no one can say, oh, game turned on that red card. Was it a red for you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, almost as if he intended to do it, right? I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing with force. So I don't think there was any doubt for me that the right decision was made. And by the way, he knew it himself.
Just frustration, wasn't it? I mean, club captain John McGinn, and Thursday, again, the tiredness, they're 2-0 down. I just wonder with regards to Europe, they want to finish top four. Now, bear in mind, top five might get you into Champions League in England, but top four is guaranteeing that. They probably will get through against Ajax in the second leg on Thursday. It just shows you it's not easy, is it? I mean, as we're speaking right now, West Ham are trailing 2-1 to Burnley. They played on Thursday night as well. It's tough to juggle European football on a Thursday night and a Premier League challenge, whatever that is, top four, title, or anything.
There is no doubt, for everything that I have said about Unai Emery, and I don't want to, I don't think that it's my bias towards him. I just think that there's a certain level that I don't think he reaches when we talk about the Guardiolas.
Is he an overthinker, Janusz?
I think he is. I think the charisma sometimes is lacking a little bit. He's too studious, and that's, I think, what you're talking about. At least the way it feels for me. I look what he's done in Europe. That's great, but I still consider that let's be honest, second division, right? The stuff that he's done with Sevilla and Villarreal, that's great. Those clubs never expected that. But I think he's now at a club that he himself, and I want to give him credit to. I mean, he took it over when they were in the bottom four last season, and look where they are. So I think there's a foundation. I mean, we are talking about two very, very good managers in Unai Emery and Ange Postecoglou. He's in his first season, so I'd like to see what happens next year as well. Hopefully that's not 1 year wonder. It doesn't look that way. But both managers are managing two massive clubs, right? They're massive by size, they're massive by history, but there's a whole other level of clubs where they probably want to get to, and they're nowhere near that just yet.
6 goals and 1 assist in 8 games prior to this game for Son against Aston Villa. And then he gets 2 more assists and a goal in this one. I mean, how vital is he for the way that Ange wants to play? Because they're playing him as a striker, but so often he's much more than that.
Well, again, remember the narrative ahead of this game, Mark, was about Ali Watkins, right? I mean, how
Sure.
many
Yeah, yeah.
goals? What is 16 goals, 10 assists? What does that make a Son now? He had 13 before and
Well,
8 assists, right? So
yeah,
it's 14 and 10 now. And imagine, and they were missing him for the Asian Cup. Just imagine if you continue to be there, at such a critical time, not just because of injuries that Spurs have had and the suspensions, because they had so many more. That's on them, by the way, right? Romero seems the one anyway. But yeah, human Son, because his ability to play anywhere, well, it doesn't change the fact that I still think that he should be playing somewhere wider, right? So if Richarlison continues the form he had before injuries, I still think they need a top striker before that. If you want to play against the best, and if Spurs make it to the Champions League, of course you need 3 or 4 players to flip that to Villa. It seems to me that look, I just think that Spurs in general, regardless of where this game ended, have a higher ceiling already. I think they are 2 or 3 deep in many positions already when they're healthy. And I think if I look at Villa, I often think that it's Ali Watkins and then what, right? Because Bailey is inconsistent. They haven't gotten everything out of Moussa Diaby just yet. That time may come. I think they're strong in the midfield. They certainly are missing Boubacar Kamara, but I think and Mings. But I just think that they have so much more to do if they to stay at that level of top 4 for years and playing in the Champions League.
You spoke about strength and depth for Spurs and Van de Ven going off. Now, I remember watching the Palace game, the last game before this in the league, and he stayed on, but there was some suggestion he might have to go off, but he kept going. This time he did have to go off, and he was replaced by Dragushin, who they got from Genoa for 23 million. So going forward, hopefully Van de Ven's okay, but if he's not, would Spurs have to change how they defend a little bit because you don't have that same pace of Van de Ven?
Well, I mean, they didn't when he was gone for a long period of time, right? And that coincided with many other injuries. So it's hard to say how much they'd suffer. I mean, if he's the only one from the top players missing, I think, Dragushin, I thought it was good when he comes in. He needs to learn the ropes.
Discipline.
But, you have Royale who can play there. Obviously, he's not a center back. Davies, I mean, they have the players there. There's no doubt that he's special. Defensively, you can argue he's the best in the league, right? I mean, you can also argue he's for sure one of the best defenders. I think in terms of going forward, if you compare him to, in terms of distribution to Van Dijk, maybe he's missing that part. He's not far away. So I think it's a loss. It's a loss because it's an important run-in for Spurs right now because they desperately want to be a top 4 because I don't think you can count on top 5, right? So your goal is top 4, especially with what's happening in Europe. That can change, but we see the Italian teams being at the top and they're playing extremely well. If Inter wins next week in the Champions League, that may not be achievable. So it's a big miss because, as I've said, and I think it's worth repeating, the 2 blocks and that recovery on Ali Watkins. Remember that 3rd or 4th minute? Yes. I mean, that just tells you everything about Van de Ven, not just the recovery, because he was making up a mistake of his teammate, and he still covered ground against somebody like Ali Watkins and blocked that shot. So I mean, he's a special defender for sure.
Okay, so that's Spurs plus 20 and Villa plus 18 on the goal difference. Final question: although Villa have a 2-point lead on Spurs, who finishes higher? I'm not going to say who finishes top 4 because stranger things have happened. So who finishes higher, Villa or Tottenham Hotspur?
Yeah, without looking at the run and some degree that it's important because I don't remember exactly who's playing whom. Psychology of this loss makes me wonder a little bit. So I'm gonna say Spurs.
Okay, and as part of that answer, the fact that if Villa go through, they've got another couple of Thursday nights and may go even further than that, and it's just too difficult for them right now to play both European football and be on the front foot in the race for the top 4?
Yeah, it doesn't help. I mean, it's always easier to recover players when you don't have a game in the midweek. I suppose it's always easier to get players on the training pitch when you finally have a full squad for the most part, at least the key players. So I do think it's a little bit of an excuse for Villa.
Final score at Villa Park. Didn't expect this one, especially at halftime. Aston Villa 0, Tottenham Hotspur 4. This Ange ball seems to be doing all right again.